the Everything But Politics podcast.
Fun one for you all today. And it is great to be reconnecting with this week's guest, Tom Zenner. Tom is a true veteran in the world of media and the host of the Degree of Scandalous Podcast alongside Cato Kalin. Tom, it is great to see you again. How are you, my man?
Well, I'm doing great, guys. Thank you for the invite. Congratulations. You guys are crushing it. 135 episodes. That's impressive. So thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah,
That's
totally.
fun.
And Tom, so you and I were going back and forth earlier via text, and you mentioned that you were at the site of the Charlie Manson killing spree. What was that experience like?
We do that on our podcast. So with Cato involved in the biggest really media story ever in the history of the world and the biggest crime story ever. We're able, we've built an audience that really likes these huge famous cases. And, we have a true crime podcast and there's such an audience for that. And we live in LA where we can get to these places, get great guests. So we've done it. We started last summer when I took Cato to all the key spots from the OJ scandal. So for the first time, and that was the 30-year anniversary of the crimes, of the murders. And Cato, of course, was the last person really to be with OJ, after the timeline set up where he had gone to McDonald's basically right before the murders, right? So I took Cato to that McDonald's. He had never been there in 30 years. We went to Rockingham where OJ was. We went to the Bundy condo where the murders happened and a few other places. And then we did the Night Stalker, which was really good. We went to all the spots of the Night Stalker. You guys are too young for this, but this was one of the most famous serial killers ever that was roaming the streets of LA back in 1985. There's a great Netflix docuseries. So today we did Charles Manson, which is another one of the biggest cases of all time. And it's chilling when you go to these sites and you know about these stories that have been in, just the public consciousness for so long, and you've heard so much about it. And then Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was a great movie, right? That was kind of based on that. So we literally retrace the steps of Charles Manson when you do this thing and his followers, those nut job followers of his. So we started at Spawn Ranch, where was their headquarters, where they lived. And then we went to the site of the first murder, and then we went to the site of the murder of Sharon Tate and 4 people there, which was the most horrific one. And then we went, and we had to tone it down a little. So we went to, I don't know if you saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but we went to the Cinerama Dome, which is that dome theater on Sunset Boulevard, which was a big part of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So we went there too. So it's interesting. And if you just know what happened there, and it's chilling. And then you want to just, get past just the salaciousness of it and the chilling aspects to realize, man, just put yourself in that situation where these monsters are walking down these steps, coming into this house and wreaking havoc like that. So it's fascinating. The audience likes it. I think it's good for people to see it because they're so into it, and we take them there. So it's pretty cool way to showcase these crimes.
Well, when you had mentioned that to me earlier today, the first thing I thought of was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because that's the only reason. So I'm 25. I only know that story because of that movie. So how far outside of LA were you?
Start at Spawn Ranch, which is it's far. It's near Simi Valley, near Chatsworth. So it's way past into the valley and then beyond, right? It's just this remote area. The site of the first murder was like off Topanga Canyon. And it's just, you don't even have a cell signal there. I don't know why anyone would want to live there. But all these are kind of in the LA area. And just to put it into perspective for you guys and your audience, this would be like Margot Robbie or Jennifer Lawrence or, a big star. Sharon Tate was a big star, and she was married to one of the most famous directors, Roman Polanski, at the time. So it was a huge story. And then there was an heiress, Abigail Folger. She was a descendant of the Folger Coffee Company. So that'd be like somebody connected, to $1 billion empire, right? So you could see how big that was. And the significance of these murders was it was the end of the 60s. And that was really a time of love, free, hippies, carefree. And this just like that put an end to it, right? Nobody was safe. If you were a celebrity, you thought you were safe. It just kind of put the end. It changed the tone from that point forward. That's why it was such a significant case and story.
Got it.
And where did this hobby of learning this come from? Was this a young age? When did you get involved in learning more about all these crazy stories?
Yeah. Well, I've always been just fascinated by news, history, content, pop culture. I grew up in a small town in Minnesota, literally. So all I had was really information in sports. I played sports. I used sports to kind of do
Mhm.
what I, could do in life, get a football scholarship and do all that. But I've always been obsessed with information as
Mm.
long as I can remember. And, growing up without the internet, I know you guys aren't used to that, but
Yeah.
like it was newspapers, it was magazines, it was one of four channels, right? But I was always obsessed with information, and I was always obsessed with big stories and LA. I was always I wanted to get here, right? This is where the action was in my mind. This is where the excitement was. This is where the epicenter for everything that I wanted to do. So I knew about these stories, and my primary focus was sports for so many years. I was a
Yes.
sports anchor on the news and everything, but pop culture has always been something that's really something I'm just really versed in. I used to have I had several podcasts in the past, all dealing with pop culture, glamour, luxury lifestyle, things like that. So I've always just always been captivated by it, and then I just try to learn as much as I can and constantly reading about it. And then before we do these stories, I really try to study. So I'm knowing all the details, because you know how it's like, man. You get one thing wrong, you get 15 comments telling you, right?
No doubt.
Well, Tom, I'm happy you mentioned your upbringing in Minnesota. So I don't think when you were a kid, Minnesota sports were not dominant, or they were not setting any trends in the culture, right? What you later on surrounded yourself with with true champions. When you were growing up, who did you admire, as Minnesota was weak in that regard?
Sure. But the Vikings were always good, but
Mhm.
just good enough to just break your heart, right? I mean, they went to four Super Bowls, lost them all. It was just devastating. I was a huge Vikings fan, like the Twins. We didn't have an NBA team. I really wasn't that much into hockey, but it was probably the Minnesota Vikings, and then it was the Minnesota Gophers, right? The
Mm.
university. That's where I wanted to go, and literally, I have a grudge with them to this day. Like that, I didn't they didn't recruit me or anything. I hold it personally against them to this day, almost to the point. My daughter is an athlete. All my kids are athletes. They're all Division I athletes, and my daughter runs track at Boston College right now. She's a freshman. And
Nice.
when she was being recruited, we went to Notre Dame, we went to Texas Tech, we went to Miami, and then Boston College, she went there on the recruiting trip. So I told her, let's have Minnesota recruit you and go out there. I'll go with you on a recruiting trip. And then when if they offer you and say, hey, we want you to come here, I want you to tell them we reject you as a family. So I told her. So those were the teams that I followed growing up, and I was so into it, right? But I was always attached to the announcers, and just
Mm.
that's why I wanted to go. I was an athlete, but I also knew I there was never a point in my life I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I'm lucky that way. I always wanted to be a TV sports anchor. That's all I really wanted to do, and work in the media. There was never a thought of anything else. So I was lucky, even though it was a small town, 700 people on a dirt road. There was never a doubt for me. So I could gauge everything I did towards that. Communication classes, working internships at the NBC affiliate in Minneapolis every year,
Mhm.
doing my own shows, etc. So I was lucky because I had a clear path and I knew exactly what I wanted to do.
So, when you have this clear path from there, how did you execute and kind of make your dream a reality?
hmm Well, I was obsessed with it. It wasn't just something I was obsessed
And
with it.
what age are we talking?
Late teens, like throughout high school, I knew what I was going to do. Then I went to college, and then I played football. I got a scholarship to play football in California. So
Mm.
I played out here, and everything I did was gearing towards, could I get some experience? Could I write this? Could I work for the campus radio station? Start putting my resume tape together. And that's how you get your first job in TV. So when I would intern at the NBC affiliate in Minneapolis, I learned a lot. I got to do a lot in a major market like that. And I just jumped into everything, did whatever I could, put the tape together, and then you got to start sending it out. And back then, these are these big tapes, VHS tapes. You start mailing them out to these job openings all around the country and hope for the best. And then I got my first job in Sioux City, Iowa. That's where I started.
Oh, nice.
Yep,
Okay.
in Major 9 News in Sioux City, Iowa.
What age were you?
Yeah.
22.
What were you covering?
High school sports. Not glamorous at all, right?
Mhm.
High school sports. That's about it, I think, and I would literally have to take the camera out, put it on a tripod, get highlights of a baseball game or a softball game, and then edit them myself and do the broadcast. But I was only there 4.5 months. I literally thought I was ready for the big time, even though I was, so raw, so young, so naive
Mm.
about really what was involved in getting to a high level in Broadway, but I thought I was ready. So I was very aggressive then to get out. So then I got my next job in Omaha, Nebraska, which was a big move up, cover the Nebraska Cornhuskers. They had a CBA team there that was fun. And, the University of Nebraska. So that was good. And I was there for a while. Then I went to Phoenix. Then I went to Chicago. Then I went to Boston and then back to Phoenix. So
Now, back then, what were you editing your videos on?
3/4 inch tape. You guys have no clue what that is. These are these big cassettes. You plug them into the editing machine, you set the in point, you set the out point, you hit preview. Okay, that looks okay. Then you edit it. And it's a process. It's not like
No
Final
doubt.
Cut, nothing like that. And you have to watch the audio level. It was just raw. It looked crappy. The other thing too, when I started out, my first job in TV in 1990 in Sioux City, Iowa, for the teleprompter, we typed our scripts on typewriters with 5 copies. And then you would rip the copies apart. One would go to the director, one would go to the floor director, one would go to the producer, and one would go into the teleprompter. So you take all your scripts, maybe 20 pages of scripts that you're going to do for that sportscast, tape them together, and then they get fed to the teleprompter. I mean, it's crazy to think where technology is now compared to what it was when I started. If I needed stats, I had to look them up in a media guide, right?
Wow.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like,
it's
so
just
the
different.
the most similar thing that I could recall. So when we were kids, like what I'm about to tell you proves we're little. We would go through the newspaper that was thrown on the front door and go through like the standings with the NFL. And
Right on.
we had those mini helmets, if you recall those. And
Yeah.
we stacked them up, and whoever wasn't leading the division 1, 2, 3, 4, we'd have them in that order for the whole week. So that's about as far as we go. And then
But I
everything
would
led to
also
the
say,
apps.
come like end of elementary school, that's when Sports Center and Top 10, you were
Right.
able to get it on there every morning compared to looking in a
Yeah.
newspaper.
So
Yeah.
that was the beginning. So Tom, you've clearly done a lot in your career. How do you describe what you do to someone at a dinner party?
That's a good question now because when I did TV for 15 years, it was easy. I'm a TV sports anchor and I'm a talk show host. I have a sports talk show and I anchored the news at night, the 6, 10,
Mhm.
11 o'clock. That's easy. But when I got out and became kind of just a content creator, entrepreneur, it's it is hard to explain. My kids don't even know how to explain it. It's just people that know me know what I do. And the thing is, I just try to do as much as I can, right? I'm a writer. I've written a lot of books, including a book that came out this week,
Oh,
and I ghost wrote it, and it's on one of the biggest scandals of the last 25 years, the Varsity Blues college recruiting scandal. Everybody remembers that story that swept up those rich parents, remember, for trying to get their kids into colleges, and they had to go to jail.
Hmm.
Felicity Huffman, Lori Loughlin,
Yep,
yeah,
yep.
the
yeah, yeah,
Hollywood
yeah.
actresses.
Yes.
So I wrote a book on that, and it just came out. It's called The Scandal Within the Scandal. So you guys remember that story, right? It was
Yes.
it was the biggest media story there was. And the media kept pumping it out there. These rich parents cheating, taking slots away from other people. And now, do you want to hear this story? Because it's unbelievable.
Please.
You want to
Yeah,
hear it?
let's hear it.
Please.
Yeah. Okay, so everybody was watching the news. It was on every show, every newscast, every talk show at night. These rich parents, blah, 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 blah. That was pretty much the message. But here was the real story. Yes, those parents did that. They Photoshop pictures. They would make payments to coaches to get in. Total cheating, right? Not felonies by any means, but not right. Now, this all comes down to the Justice Department attorneys in Boston, Massachusetts. They were investigating a Wall Street guy that had committed some white collar crimes. And this guy cut himself a deal. He said, "Hey, I can give you something bigger. Have you heard of Rick Singer?" So Rick Singer is the name of the consultant that was the mastermind of this whole thing. But he had clients like Joe Montana, Steve Jobs. He was running a legitimate business for years. 90% of his clients, it was legit, but he had this side door where he would pay these coaches, athletic directors, blah, 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 and get these kids in. So this dude ratted him out, and then they investigated him for 6 months. So the lead prosecutors for the Justice Department in Boston thought this could make our careers. This could make. So what they did is out of like 4,000 clients that Singer had, they found one client of his from the state of Massachusetts. His name was John Wilson. And this guy, yes, was very wealthy. He lived in Hyannisport. His next door neighbors were the Kennedys, the Kennedy compound.
Yeah.
JFK had his entire cabinet at the house next to him during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Ted Kennedy lived there. When I've been to his house many times, John, I stay in the guest house. I can look out the bathroom in the guest room and I could see Ethel Kennedy before she died. RFK Jr., that's where he grew up. So they found this one guy. He was the president. He had been the president of Staples Global, the president of The Gap, extremely accomplished, did very well. He had grown up in abject poverty. His mom had an 8th grade education and she abused him, tried to kill him, tried to stab him. He never knew his dad. And he worked in tobacco fields. This guy's self-made, right? Harvard Business School,
Mhm.
blah, 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 blah. So he always wanted to make sure that his kids had it better than he did. So he stressed education and he hired Rick Singer to help his kids. He had twin daughters and his son, Johnny. His son, Johnny, was one of the best water polo players in the country. He set a world record for being the youngest kid at the age of 9 to swim from Alcatraz to the shore. Live on the Today Show, by the way. The Today Show covered it live. He was on the Oprah Winfrey Show in Chicago. President Bush wrote him a letter. Gavin Newsom was the mayor of San Francisco, sent him a letter. He was extremely accomplished. He went to USC. Now, John made a donation, right? $250,000, legal donation reported on his taxes. These prosecutors wanted the case in Boston, even though 80% of the parents of Rick Singer were in California. So they made everybody fly to Boston. They lumped it all into this big conspiracy, and John refused to take the plea. So he could have done 2 months in jail or 6 weeks. He said, I will not say that my kids took shortcuts and that I committed a crime. So he had to spend $13 million. The government kept piling charges on him because they needed him to cave. He refused. Eventually, he had 11 felonies. He was facing 180 years in prison, more than the Wolf of Wall Street, Bernie Madoff, and Sam Bankman-Fried, and he didn't commit a single crime. He had a Russian show trial with an 82-year-old handpicked judge in Boston, convicted on everything. They wouldn't allow 85% of his evidence into the court. Convicted, he appeals. He hires Donald Trump, President Trump's Solicitor General, from his first term as his appeals attorney, who fought all the cases at the Supreme Court for Donald Trump. And they overturn it all. So that's the book. We tell the real story. And I was real aggressive in getting that job with him. It was tough. They interviewed a lot of writers, but I really wanted that book because I really understood the story. And he's on Good Morning America tomorrow.
Wow.
Oh, nice.
As we launch our book. So we're really kicking this thing off, and he's going to be on Good Morning America on ABC tomorrow. So that should be exciting.
That's an incredible story.
So for what I do, I dabble in a lot of things. I'm a writer. I've written 40 books. I've had my own magazine. I write cover stories now on celebrities. I have the podcast. I work with Tom Brady, with his company.
Yes.
It's hard, I like to do a lot of things, right?
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, thank you for sharing that. I'm looking for, what's the book called when it's released?
It's called The Varsity Blues College Recruiting Scandal, the scandal within the scandal. And every detail's in that book. Yeah, it's out. It's out right now if you look at it on Amazon.
Now, for someone that's written so many dozens of books, what is your writing process like? And for a book like that, what kind of preparation goes into that?
Yeah, that one was an intense project because he was in Boston. I was here. He's an intense individual. He's he's a brilliant guy. And this had so much legal, just jargon. I mean, you really had to understand the legal process with what was going on, with what the government was doing. So I just had to dive in on that thing. Luckily, I know the college recruiting game. I know the sports game. I knew the story and I knew his story. So my job was really to take his information and turn it into his voice and then rewrite it and rewrite it and rewrite. So that one took over a year of just constant back and forth between him and I, me recording him, me transcribing that, then me writing the chapters, then us going over it and blah, blah, blah. I've written over 40 books that are sports championship books.
Yes.
Where when a team won the World Series, the Super Bowl, I would write those books in 2 weeks, and I'd be writing 2 books at the same time because you could only publish the one with the team that wins. So after the AFC and NFC championship game, I'll start writing the books on both those winners and then finish up the one after the Super Bowl with the team that wins. We get it to the printer that night. It's in stores like 3 or 4 days later. So that was a crazy. So that's where that's a different type of writing. It's speed. I did a book on the royal wedding with
yes,
Kate
I saw that.
Middleton. I did that. I partnered with Access Hollywood. I flew to LA and I met with Access Hollywood, Extra, E, all of them, all the big shows. Hey, want to collaborate on this thing? And Access Hollywood wanted to do it. So I wrote the book, and then Billy Bush and all those the talent would promote it for 2 weeks before and then 2 weeks after. But that was intense too because Osama bin Laden died that night. So I knew that we weren't going to get the publicity we needed that Sunday night after the wedding. And then my designer had slow internet. And it was one of the most stressful projects I ever had because I had to have every section of that book okayed by like 26 people at NBC. And I'm watching that wheel spin, when we're trying to send files, and I'm going, we're not going to get this thing done. It was really stressful, but we got that one done. So my writing style, if I dive in, I'm not going to write too many more books, but if I decide to write one and someone wants me to write their story as a ghostwriter, I've got a unique process. I know in my mind how I see the book happening, and then I kind of figure out the chapters in advance, and then I walk them through it. I kind of interview them, record it, transcribe it, and then start writing.
Wow.
So
for someone who does want to like become a writer, what's like the business process in that? Do you have your own publishing company? Do you go pitch it to different publishers? What's like the best approach for someone starting out in becoming a writer?
Here's what I would say. If you want to become a writer, and there's so many different ways to do it, but let's say you want to be a magazine writer. There's so many magazines out there. Just start pitching yourself. Figure out what they cover, figure out who you have access to, who you can get a story with, and just bombard them. You got to be aggressive. You got to be obnoxious even. Practice writing as much as you can, meaning even if it's for a small regional or the local newspaper, whatever you could do. Because I was not a good writer when I started. I may have thought I was, but that's something that just takes time to hone that craft, and you can only do that by practice. If you're writing a book, the times have changed. You don't need a publisher anymore. There's just so many smarter ways to do it. If you're an entrepreneur or smart, I'm used to moving fast, right? Everything I do in the media world is instant. It's fast. I have no time to wait for anybody. The book publishing world is the slowest, stupidest thing in the world. They operate on a different clock. They don't care. They're stuck in a different time zone, man. And they're like a dinosaur age. They just go at their own pace. It drives me nuts. But you got to kind of deal with it. I have a literary agent, right? I have an agent that will, shop my books, or she'll bring me projects. But the key to writing is just writing a lot, getting better, figuring out what your voice is. And there's so many ways to get published now online. I mean, there's just so many outlets, right? If you're serious, you got to be serious about it. But if you are, you just got to like bombard the places that you want to like see your writing at. Like that's what I did. When I covered the Bulls, I was around Michael Jordan every day, and I was a writer, and there was a new magazine that came out. It was called Maxim. And it would have been your favorite magazine now, right? It's babes, beer, chicks, sports, and it was in your face. It was just cool. And I said, I've got to write for Maxim. I've got to write for Maxim. So I just bombarded those editors. Hey, I want to write for you. And then they said, well, what can you bring me? I said, let me get you a story with Michael Jordan. All right. You get me a story with Michael Jordan, you can write for us. So Michael Jordan was doing his summer basketball camp at the University of Chicago, like a small little gym in Chicago. And I knew Michael, and I show up, and then I end up in this small office with Michael. And I go, Michael, I'm writing a story for Maxim. And so he gives me some time, and he freaking went off. He was talking shit about Jerry Krause. He was talking about speeding tickets. He went off. And I wrote this story, and the cover said, it was on the cover, it said, Michael Jordan says whatever the hell he wants. That was the name of the story.
Wow.
And
Nice.
Michael, he's not a revealing guy. And this story was so different. Howard Stern was talking about the story. So after that, those guys, I ended up writing for them for a while. Then they all went to this other magazine called Details, and I went with them. So, I've always found, I've never learned this in college. You're either aggressive or you're not, and that's what it takes. And that's been my story. Doesn't always work, but if you're wired that way, you got nothing to lose. And what's the worst thing? They could say no. But if you think you can do it, if you think you get this story or write this or get an interview or whatever it is you want to do, start a podcast, just do it. Unless somebody tells you suck and you shouldn't do it, right? But if not, man, if that's your passion, shouldn't let anything stop you.
Totally agree. And Tom, I'm happy you brought up the Bulls. So I'm going to give you a quick little story. So we grew up in Northwest Indiana. So we're about 20 minutes west of Gary, about 40 minutes from downtown Chicago. So our grandmother, may she rest in peace, she wasn't into sports. She didn't like that like high energy stuff. Very quiet, reserved woman. But in the mid 90s, she watched every single Bulls game. It had to be at the TV. It was her reason, her passion. You were around that too. What was different about that team that would draw my grandma to them every single night?
Yep. And luckily I was there every day. I hosted a show with Dennis Rodman. So I was really part of this. It's Michael Jordan. And it's just the aura of the Bulls. Because even before Rodman, it was Michael Jordan. There's just something about Michael Jordan, his killer instinct, his look, his coolness, his assassin attitude, his skill, his high. It just there's you show me, and I get in debates all the time. Like I try to shut people down whenever I hear anything about LeBron. I mean, you don't know. I mean, you don't know what Michael was like. Don't give me anything about LeBron. But I respect LeBron. He's a great player. And they were in Chicago, and they were cool, and they were always winning. Right? People love winners. And they did it the right way, and they had America loves stars. Michael Jordan was the biggest star. You're just drawn to him, and it almost became like a popular TV show. Like you had to watch it. I don't care if you're a sports fan or not. You want to watch it. The Bulls are playing in the finals. Everybody's watching it. And then they had those big epic battles against, his first finals was against the Lakers with Magic. And it was just, and you knew you'd never see anything like that again. And it was just, the game winning shots, the drama, it's just, that's cool that your grandma liked Michael and the Bulls. That,
Well,
for not being a
only
sports fan.
sport she ever liked. Only thing she watched.
Our whole life growing up, she never watched a single sports. No, not a single game of
No Cubs,
anything.
Nothing.
She could care less, but
The 90s Bulls.
you went upstairs to like her closet, and there were a lot of Bulls stuff from the 90s that she would watch every. She wasn't at home. She had it taped, and she wanted no one to tell her what happened. Yeah.
God, that's so funny because she doesn't like sports. But
Yeah.
and then it was Rodman too. He was such a character, right? People just loved the theatrics of him. It was like a soap opera, and they were just celebrities. They were just larger than life. I remember so many times, like I would travel with them sometimes, and watching their team bus pull away from a hotel and watch 200 people run after the bus. I mean, it was you can't understand how big the Bulls were if you weren't there. And there was just something, and I even knew when I was covering them. I pinched myself every time I was at a game. I go, this is never going to happen again. There's never going to be anything like this. There's never going to be anything like Michael. Kobe was close. Kobe was great and amazing, but with no internet at the time, it was being on NBC, the dominance, and the star power. There's just nothing like that team.
Well,
What did you learn as a journalist during that time covering the most iconic team in the world?
Yeah. I did. I learned some great lessons because it taught me, and I really started learning that lesson even sooner when I was in Phoenix when Charles Barkley was huge with the Suns, and I was around him all the time. I never got intimidated by big stars. They never scared me because I was around Michael Jordan all the time, and Michael Jordan was the coolest athlete I've ever encountered. He was professional, always spoke to the media, and I can't tell you how many times I run into him somewhere and he could not have been. I have amazing stories with Michael Jordan that you would never believe were true. And so after that, it's 30 years ago. After that, nothing phases me. If I'm not intimidated or scared to ask anybody anything because I know Michael would have handled it cool. And you're not Michael. You know what I mean? So I never take anything personal. And hey, this is your job to communicate with the media and do these types of things. So I definitely learned that. I learned what star power is like from seeing it, and just, excellence, and just watching those guys. And then just, being in Chicago at that time was so exciting, being on TV, how much the public loved that team. It was just great. But I would say I was lucky, very lucky to be around him and that team and those guys, because it'll never be duplicated. The stuff that happened, those years, because I go to Laker games. Like I took my son, I try to take him to every big event so he can see him. He's a sophomore in high school. When Luca got traded here, I said, Dash, we're going to that first game. And the crowd loved Luca more than LeBron. And it was hard for me to think, God, LeBron's one of the greatest ever. Michael Jordan, when he got introduced to the crowd, there was nothing like it. Nothing.
So how do you think Tom Brady compares to someone like Michael Jordan?
Very similar. Very similar. Smart. Team first, never handed anything, chip on their shoulder, coupled with great talent, hard work, put winning above everything else, team above everything else, and then getting the results from it. And I think it's a perfect example. I mean, you look at, like, I don't know how big your audience, if they're into sports, but look at the 49ers right now. They're trying to figure out what to do with their quarterback, right?
Yep.
And do we give him 50 million? Brady always took less so he can
Yeah.
sign that backup safety or a tight end or offensive tackle. That's winning. That's leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why everything these guys touch turns to gold, because that philosophy they used in sports is what they do everything in their life, whether it's a business decision, whether it's their health, their diet, their training, their relation. I mean, they're winners, right? And so I would say that's a great comp, just those two guys. Brady did it forever, forever. Who plays that
Forever.
long in the NFL,
Forever.
right? And yeah, and had to deal with Bill Belichick. I mean, holy crap. That's another thing I'm always getting into arguments about, because I say it's all Brady in New England, all Brady. Belichick has a losing record without. So don't even argue to me. It's not even close. Tom Brady made those teams.
And
He is the reason they won those Super Bowls.
Well, he
Do
kind
you
of
want to
I think
debate that?
what
right?
he did in Tampa is a testament to that too.
Boom. What have they done without each other? That's all you have to say. That's all
I'm
you have
with
to
you.
say.
Yeah, Brady's my favorite athlete ever. Meeting him at the vault a little under 2 years ago was a true privilege. So that was special. Prior to that, did you and him have a relationship, or was it formed then?
No, I was already pretty close with some of his guys, right? I've known his manager, his right hand man, for many years, and I was doing stuff for him, prior to that.
Is that Ben Rawitz?
Yes,
Okay.
who's a great guy. Ben's an awesome dude, and now they got a great production company called Shadow Lion, where they're doing
Yes.
amazing content.
We
But
met
yeah,
Vic
man,
Blends about a month ago. He was a great dude, and he had nothing
you
but good
interviewed
things to say.
Vic?
No, we met
him.
him. We were at
Oh yeah,
South by Southwest in Austin.
Hey,
Yeah,
Vic's a great dude. He
he
is
is.
I went. He did his episode with Trey Young here last summer, and my son and I went out there and he's just the coolest dude. My son was playing one-on-one with him. I think Vic was getting annoyed because my son was reading like the NBA finals and they went at it. But no, Vic's cool, right?
Totally.
Inspirational. He's that guy that it just cuts through the camera, right? That he's just so real and so positive, and his Christian, background, and he's just you can't fake that, right? What
Nope.
Vic has, you know.
Totally.
Mhm. Hey,
It
were
was.
you guys shocked how tall Brady was when you met him in person?
I was. Yeah, I
I
was.
think that catches people off guard. You don't expect him to be that tall. He's legit 6'5" and lean,
Yeah, people don't know this. For those listening, PBD got him an unbelievable gift too. That huge, like a
That painting,
mural
that mural.
banner.
Mhm.
It's just massive. I don't even know what you do with something that big, but it was incredible.
I've been to Brady's office many times. It doesn't fit in his office. I
Yeah,
don't know where he's got it, to be honest with you. But that was really cool. And I think Tom was really moved by that. He thought that was great.
yeah, that was very, that was special. So, how did you get involved in Shadow Lion then, and what is your role there?
It's just like everything else. Either I stumble into it through relation, like I'm lucky, but sometimes you have to create your own luck. But I've always kind of been in the right place at the right time with things. But I think the lesson from me that people I think try to glean from me, that know me and see me in action, is how do you have these relationships? How do you
Hmm.
know everybody? How can you and that's one thing I can do, right? I do have a lot of relationships. I may not have a $5 billion, but I can get anybody out of any jam at any time, and I can reach anybody at any time almost, which is, a good to have. When I played football in college, you know who my coaches were? No, I played at the University of Pacific, Division I football. My position coach was John Gruden, who I talk with 3 times, or I'm in touch with 3 times a week, including today, because Frank Caliendo was on the Dan Patrick show, and I sent Gruden the link. He was doing his Gruden impersonation. It was so funny. My other coaches were I had Charles Davis, who's now the lead college football announcer for CBS. He was the number 2 NFL announcer for CBS. Good looking guy that works for the NFL Network as well. And Hugh Jackson, who was the head coach for the Raiders and the head coach for Brown.
Yes. Yeah.
But these people I'm still close with them. And then I got to be around Charles Barkley and Michael, the Bulls and this, and then Boston. But I know how to cultivate relationships, and I don't do it to do it. I do it just because I'm around these people. I value relationships above everything else, really, especially in this business that I do, because it just opens so many doors. So the way I started with Brady, same way. This is probably 6, 7 years ago, and I wanted to interview Tom for the cover of Jet Set magazine. And I used to be the sports anchor in Boston, and my friend Butch Stearns, who's still the main sports anchor out there at Fox. I go, Butch, I got to get to Brady. Who do I reach out to? He goes, you got to go through Ben Rawitz. That's his guy. I go, do you know him? No, not really. I met him once. I could give you his email. So I just started reaching out to Ben and telling him I'd love to do something with Brady and blah 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 blah. And they don't have time for Jet Set magazine, especially when he was playing.
Mhm.
But I just developed a relationship with Ben, and then I tried to bring value to Ben. I knew he had this newsletter. Ben, I think I got an advertiser for you. So, and I'm not looking for anything in return. So then my relationship with Ben just grew and grew and grew. And then he wanted me to meet Gilad, who runs Shadow Lion, his production company. Gilad and I are super tight, and he's brilliant. And I just want to be involved, right? And I'm not always making it about me. It's not what do I get from this. I like win-win scenarios,
Mm.
and I just want to develop these relationships because it always comes back to you times 10. And then I became kind of a confidant, or part of, once they're very guarded, but once you're kind of in, right, you're in. And then so I helped set up like big strategic partnerships when like I helped bring him to PBD, right? And then we did this thing with FanDuel last year where we did a real-time docuseries on X on the Boston Celtics playoff march. And I brought FanDuel
Yes.
in with a big
Yes.
price tag, which did over 2 billion impressions. It was really successful, and luckily the Celtics won. So, I'm just part of the team. It's not like I have an office there, but I'm in touch with them all the time. And, I go out there whenever I can because it's in Boston. My daughter's in Boston at Boston College. So that's what it's about. Life is about relationships. It just is. I don't care. It's not about your college education. That's great. It's about being in a business or doing something you want and just developing these relationships, growing with them, being dependable, being somebody you can count on. Your word means something, hustling, but you got to have that hunger, right? And I know you guys do, right? You wouldn't be doing this. You wouldn't be on episode 135. And then you just can't let anything stop you, right? Because everybody deals with ups and downs and adversity and this and that or reasons to quit. And you just can't let anything get in your way if you know what you want to do.
And so you fortunately had that at an extremely young age. That kept evolving in new cities, in new books. How did it evolve into new podcasts?
Because I knew podcasts were the next thing. And I got out of local news because I saw it dying. And I'm glad I did. This was
When did
in
you know podcasts were the next thing?
When did I start doing my first one? Maybe 7, 8 years ago, probably. I did one with Matt Liner.
Yes.
We did one during the college football season, and then I did this one called One. I tried to, develop everything 1 degree, meaning 1 degree you can get to anybody. So I had 1 degree of glamorous, right? And I would interview like personal chefs for celebrities and just really interesting people around Hollywood. But even though I knew podcasts were the next thing, I didn't know how to do them. I was clueless, right? I was naive. I thought I treated it more like a morning radio show. Even the episode with me and Cato, or our show with me and Cato, it was too loose early. You can't just throw it out there and assume people are going to come, right? You've got to have good content. You've got to deliver it, right? And we kept evolving. And then the turning point for us was when OJ Simpson died last year. On the day he died, I said, Cato, I'll meet you in the studio in 2 hours. We did this episode and boom, it changed everything just like that.
Yeah, that was good.
Tom, what is your message for those who are scared to go after their dreams or whatever that little side thought is in the back of their head that they just don't go after?
Well, I would say this, it's too easy to say, just go for it, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're not wired that way, it's tough, right? I'm an aggressive person. I don't care. I think growing up where I did, helped me, right? Just because no one was going to hand me anything. I had to figure it out and do it. And I was just aggressive and I knew what I wanted to do. I would just say, what do you got to lose, right? And if you're passionate about it, there shouldn't be anything to stop you. You should not talk yourself out of something if it's what you really want to do. Like me, I don't want to be a physicist, right? Could I go write a book on physics or something? Maybe. It'd be terrible, but my heart wouldn't be in it. But you know what I mean? So if you're doing whatever it is you want to do, you just can't take it personally. Who cares if someone doesn't like what you do or you get a bad comment or what? You just can't listen. You got to learn how to block those people out. There's no value to that. Only listen. Like I tell people all the time, because people come to me, a lot of times for advice. I said, do not, if they're going through something, I said, do not listen to anybody that is trying to scare you or trying to, tell you anything negative. It's not being Pollyanna. It's not pie in the sky. It's just like, man, I just believe um positive thinking. I might be a little over, but that's just how I'm wired because nothing phases me. It's weird. If something bad happens in my life, now I'm a Christian, which is a big part of that. So I always feel there's a reason for it or there's something I can learn. It's almost weird how I can go through some crazy stuff or some bad things can happen and it does not faze me.
Hmm.
I'm not saying I'm not human, but I just somehow think that there's something better or there was a reason for that to happen or I had to learn something from it. I had to take something from it. It's not woe is me, this horrible. It's like, what did I do to get myself into this situation where this could happen? Let me fix that. Let me try to fix that. Let me learn. Let me grow. So I don't, you should have confidence in yourself, but you shouldn't take yourself too seriously. You shouldn't think that
Mhm.
you're invincible or you can get yourself out of everything. But I mean, you should have enough confidence in yourself that if you believe and you do things the right way, they're going to work out. If you're taking shortcuts and you're not doing things the right way, or you're, getting by in ways you shouldn't, it will come back and affect you. Bad things will happen. But if you can just program yourself to try to do things the right way, not try to like take advantage of people, hurt people, do that, it's going to work out. And if something negative happens, there's a reason for it.
I love
So
that.
I'm too much. I'm sure I drive my wife crazy, but I think that's a great message for your kids to see,
Yes.
or an example. And that's what they
Absolutely.
see, right? But you got to back it up with hard work too, right?
Yep.
And that's what it's all about. There's nothing easy in this life. People look, you guys, 135 podcasts, it must be easy. You just turn on that microphone and start talking, and people, no, right? I mean, you got to promote it. You got to have content. You got to edit it. You got to bring it. You know what I mean? And if you're willing to do that work, God, it just pisses me off, man. How people just take things for granted in this day and age, and they have no idea the sacrifice people have made in life or how lucky we are to live in these times. So if you can not be one of those people that thinks everything is entitled to you, that you deserve this, blah, blah, all this complaining, you can accomplish anything in this life. And it's so easy right now. There's so many ways to do it, right?
Yeah,
Love
and
it.
it's clear you have an abundant mindset where you knew what you wanted to do as a young kid, but in your household, was it you could be whatever you want as long as you work hard, or what was that upbringing like?
Well, I mean, I grew up at a totally different time, right? And this is small town Minnesota. This is rural. I grew up on a dirt road, right? Literally. I mean, we lived near farms, right? Farms.
Yeah.
So it was hard work. But for me, my parents knew that I was not a small town person and that I was an athlete. So they kind of let me do my thing. And all I did was work out. All I did was practice basketball. All I did was get ready for football. And I used sports to get out of there and then make a name for myself. I was all state in football and basketball. I was the MVP of the All-Star game in high school. But it was because I wasn't initially picked for it. I was an alternate, and I was so ticked off that I got rejected that I ended up scoring 3 touchdowns and winning the MVP. Then I was so ticked off that the University of Minnesota didn't recruit me that I just channeled that into something else. I went to junior college, and I remember when I went to junior college, I played college basketball my first year out of high school, but I knew by Halloween that I missed football. I'm not a basketball player. Football's my future. So I said, what's the best junior college that I could go to around here? And it was this school called Normandale in Minnesota. They had a great coach. His name was Fred Moyer. They were a dominant team, top 10 in all of junior college in the whole country. They were great. So I set up a meeting with the coach and I literally walked into his office. And I don't know if I can't believe I did this, but I did it. I said, hey, can you take out the roster? And he took out the roster. I go, who are your running backs? And he pointed, I go, you tell them that, they're not going to be starting next year. I was literally like, he goes, all right, we'll see, Tommy. We'll see. First, you got to make the team, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? I just used that and I ended up setting the all-time junior college touchdown record. I broke OJ Simpson's record and it still
Amazing.
stands. So I broke OJ Simpson's career record. I broke Ron Spring's single season record, and both records still stand 37 years later. So I was just focused. But again, it was a chip on my shoulder. I think, I was told I was from a small school. I couldn't go to the University of Minnesota. I couldn't, do these things. And I was so pissed and just used it for fuel. Right.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
so
So-
what an amazing story. So you have your one kid who plays or track at Boston College. What do your other children do in terms of
So
sports?
I have a 27-year-old daughter who played soccer. And she played Division One soccer at Pepperdine, and she was a 4-year starter, captain for 2 years. They went to the NCAA tournament every year. She's awesome. She's a teacher now. She's a teacher in the Palisades, where the
Oh,
fires were. So on the day
yes.
of the fires, she had an emergency rescue. All she could take was her phone. She had to walk 6 miles. It
Wow.
was crazy. And, the whole Palisades got torched, except she teaches for a Christian school. And somehow that school got saved, thank God. But they can't go back into it. So they're in an office park. Larry Ellison, the founder of Oracle, his granddaughter goes to that school. So he gave the school an office park in Santa Monica. So she's teaching out of there. She just got married. I love, just her husband's awesome. And then my daughter, who's a freshman at Boston College, is transferring. So she's going to come back to California, hopefully either Cal or UCLA. And then my son's a sophomore in high school.
Okay.
And he's a baseball player.
I met your son at the event.
Dash. Yeah,
Yes.
Dash.
Yeah, I remember him. Dude,
Yeah, Dash.
well, I went to the University of Arizona, so maybe send her out
You
to
did?
send her out to
Good for you,
Tucson,
man.
get the team, the track and field women's team, elevate them a little bit.
Right on. I know
Yeah.
so many people, so many of my friends' kids go to U of A right now.
It's
From
very
LA.
a lot of LA people go to U of
Look
A.
at you, man. That's why you're always smiling. You went to U of A, had a great time, didn't you?
Yeah, right.
Hey, I got another great story for you. And it's probably why I was so aggressive getting that Varsity Blues. So here's an example. And hopefully, your listeners and viewers can get some value out of this. So when I played junior college football, my college coach didn't know, he had no recruiting connections, right? And I wanted to play in California. I wanted to play Division I football in California after JC. So here's what he said. He said, Tommy, I can't really help you on the recruiting end. You had such a great season. I can't really help you, but here's a key to my office, and here's my Watts line credit card, calling card. So back then you'd have like this calling card. It's called a Watts line. You'd call like an 800 number. You can make long distance calls. So he gave me the key to his office and this calling card. So I went into his office every night and I started calling every single school on the West Coast, every one. And I told them I was the running back coach at Normandale. I go, hey, you probably heard about Tom Zenner. Oh, you haven't? So then look, I go, let me get a tape out for you right away. So then I would send tapes out of myself. They would get them. And I ended up with 5 recruiting trips and a full scholarship. But it was just because I created my own opportunity. No one was going to do it for me. So I took it into my own hands, and I'm able to do that with my kids, making sure they get recruited. And that's why I knew so much about recruiting and really wanted to do this Varsity Blues story, because I knew I could do it right. I know what's involved. I know from a parent perspective, and I know from an athlete perspective. Right. So I really understood what that family, the Wilson family, was going through. Their life was destroyed because of this. Destroyed. None of them could get a job. Can you imagine what social media did to them? If you guys just go Google this later, John Wilson, and you'll see some of this stuff. It's just insane.
So how complicated is the NIL stuff? I mean, you have a daughter who's looking to transfer now. How complicated is that?
Complicated. It doesn't really affect the smaller sports too much because there's just not that much money, in NIL for wrestling, track, that kind of thing. Football and basketball get most of it, but it's not even NIL anymore. When they started this, it was supposed to be, right? There was supposed to be some marketing element attached to it for your name, image, and likeness, right? It just turned into a free for all. There's no regulation. It's crazy. It's a mess. It's really bad. But they have this thing called the House settlement, and there was this former athlete with the last name House and sued the NCAA, won. So, they're going to have billions of dollars to disperse to athletes from 2016 to now, and they're trying to figure out how to do that. And each school in the Power Four conferences is going to have X amount of money that they can divide up. So, I mean, if you're a football player and you know how to market yourself and you're great, you're going to make money. If you're a quarterback, you're going to make millions, right? I think that's why it's changing. You hear these interviews that Shedeur Sanders is going on right now. And it's because these kids are coming to these pros as millionaires, and that's never happened before, right? So the NIL, the college payments situation is a total mess. But there's, you shouldn't go in there thinking I'm going to play college sports to make money or to get rich. If you're smart, go get your own NIL deal. Go to the local pizza factory, say I'll sign some or whatever. There's ways to make a few $1,000s here and there, but collectively it is a total mess right now. With no leadership whatsoever, nothing. Right? It's just completely off the rails.
The only upside, I think we saw it in the NCAA tournament last month, is that the good teams play each other, right? The upsets are great, but you have the best of the best competing against one another.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely saw that. You got rid of those, 14 seeds that are making it to the Elite Eight, right? This was the big boys, and that's the thing. A school, they can just go recruit for their needs and instantly get it. I mean, a good path for a basketball player is to go mid-major, right? Do well, and then go to Kentucky, North Carolina, Duke, USC, whoever needs to pull you, right?
Hmm.
You get playing time right away, then you can go finish off at a big time program. Because it's tougher now for high school kids to get recruited, right?
Yes,
Because they're filling
yes.
a lot of these roster spots with transfers.
Well, I don't know
No,
if you saw Tom Coughlin had a great quote. I think it was a day or two ago. He's like, "What are we teaching our young people that whenever things get hard, just get up and go to the next place?"
it's true. But you
Hmm.
know what? Coaches have done that for years. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? I mean, I see both sides to that because as an athlete, you want to go where the opportunity is. And say you're at a school and they bring in a new coach, you're not going to get playing time. I mean, you got to do what's best for yourself. I think you hurt yourself if you're constantly transferring or if you check out in the middle of the season because you know you're going to leave.
Mm.
But I think the fact that there's opportunity is good. I get that point too. It's not easy for a coach because how do you build any continuity, right? How do you build a team culture? It's very hard, right? When people are constantly moving. But you know what? Wake up, man. Because if you're coaching, this is the real world. And if you're expecting something else, you're delusional and you're not going to be successful. You got to play with the rules as they are right now. And the ones that are whining the most are the ones that aren't going to win. They're just going to complain.
And even Brady's talked about how the Michigan culture shaped him and his resilience, right? If you bounce it around all these different spots, it's hard to, embrace a given
Hmm.
culture.
It's not, he didn't start right away. And then
No.
even when he finally became a starter the last year, he's always like threatened to be replaced. Wasn't it Drew Hansen? I forgot who was behind him or whatever, but they always had good quarterbacks there. And he never really got a shot to the end. Greasy was there. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
that turned him. That's a big part of what turned him into what he is now because he had to compete every day at practice there. And he wasn't just handed anything. And then, he got a great opportunity and took advantage of it, and they could never get rid of him.
Yeah.
No
Well, then, of
doubt.
course, I mean, prior to the great opportunity, Drew bled. So, I mean, he's like, okay, you did that at Michigan. Now you got to fight again. Of course, Drew got hurt and the rest is history. But, you know, so Tom, at this point in your life, how do you stay creatively inspired?
It's not a problem. It's not a
Mm.
problem at all. I have to, number one, I can't stop. I got to keep working and keep doing things. And, I want to turn my podcast into something massive. I really do.
You have a good
And
show.
so I want to, huh?
You have a nice show. I
Yeah,
like it a
thank you.
lot.
Yeah. And, so I think we kind of hitting our stride right now. So I want to get it to, I just want to get it to where it's one of the top true crime podcasts in the world. And I think we're on that path. And we get great guests, we have great content. But I mean, I'm driven by that every day to make that better, to do the writing that I do, to, get bigger deals over here, find that whatever, if there's another book I want to write. It's just, it's never, and that's why I like living in LA because there's always opportunity. They fall out of the sky if you're out there, if you're working it, right?
Totally.
But staying creative, I've done it for so long where it's a matter of life and death, survival, that you have to do it. So it's just, I'm kind of wired that way.
Yeah, and I want to give you your props. So we've been doing this for 2.5 years. We know how hard it is to find times with guests and do it on Zoom. You do it in person with someone that's not your brother, right? I have at least the luxury of doing it with my brother. So for you guys to stay so consistent is very respectable. So well done. Good stuff.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. And you know what? I'm investing in that, with the studio. And, I have my team in India that does all my production, and it's worth it because, they're cranking it out. But, I started doing it. I've always done it in the studio, but it'd be easier, if you want, you could do it on Riverside or whatever.
Yeah.
But, I like doing it in the studio. I like bringing guests in, but it's not necessary. If you got great content, you guys know what you're doing. You can do it anyway, right? Because your audience is going to want that content.
There is something valuable though about being able to shake someone's hand and look at them in the eye in real life. So
Mhm.
this is the next best thing. Like this is
Yeah,
just as a little
without a doubt.
amazing. Yeah. So
I mean, think about it. You wouldn't be able to do this years ago, and now it's so easy,
Hmm.
right? Now through Zoom or Riverside or whatever you use, I mean, boom. As long as someone could show up in front of their computer or on their
hmm
phone, it's so easy, and that's limitless for you guys when it comes to guests too. So,
certainly.
as you guys keep building your show, man, don't be afraid to ask anybody to come on. Why not? Right? What's the worst thing you can say is no. If they
Yeah,
fit the
Right
the
on.
content and the topic of what you're doing, go for it.
absolutely. So where do you see the world of podcasting in 2030?
Got even bigger. I think there's going to be probably even more of a separation between the haves and the have-nots, right? I mean, there's going to be that upper echelon. It's going to be hard. I mean, you have to make a decision when you do this. Are you doing it for money? Are you doing it just to get a message out? Are you doing it because it's fun? If you're doing it to build it into something big and to make money off it and turn it into a real big monster, it takes a lot, right? And not everybody's capable of doing that. And it's not just as easy as just flipping on the mic and thinking that people are going to find you. So I think I think the opportunity to make a ton of money is going to be always there if you grow it. And it's going to be, there's going to be some technological, I mean, with AI and what you can do with editing and just production value. I see the production value going up even higher, much higher.
Yep.
I mean, you can see the advancements every other month, you know, how things are changing. It's just incredible how it can help you with research and just everything that you're doing. I mean,
Yeah.
compared to like 3-4 years ago, if you're doing a podcast, it's nothing like it is now. Even cutting your clips, your short clips, it's AI,
Yep.
right?
Yes.
Editing your thing, you know, social media posts. It's just incredible the tools that we have right now. So I think the opportunity is huge. You just gotta, if I always tell people, if you're doing a podcast, you better learn the game. You better learn how you can make money. You better learn how you can you know, jack up that AdSense revenue on you gotta know how to find those sponsors. You gotta know what your demos are and just go for advertisers that are only in that area, right? Just don't try to like shotgun blast it out there and hope for the best. I mean, find that audience, dig down deep, and you will find sponsors that you can you know, build with, right? That's what I try
Yeah.
to do too. I don't want just a whole bunch of different sponsors. I want to just get them committed, and then just grow with them, right? Just
Absolutely.
provide value for them and have them grow.
Awesome.
This has been amazing.
Great. Tom, thank you for your time. Thank you for bringing the energy. It's been great to reconnect and have you on our show.
Well, hey guys, I appreciate the invite. Thank you very much. Best of luck. If you want round 2 someday, I got more good stories. So I haven't even
Absolutely.
scratched the
For sure.
surface.
Tom, where can everyone find you, your podcast, and everything
Sure.
else you're working on?
Yeah, you know, go check out our podcast. It's on my YouTube channel. It's Tom Zenner on YouTube. Tom Zenner or Tom Zenner Scandal. And it's pretty good. Like today, our show that dropped, we had Michael Connolly, you know, who's behind Harry Bosch. I don't know if you watch Bosch, you know, the most successful show on Amazon ever. He sold over 80 million books. He did the Lincoln Lawyer, you know, and then we're into like the big murder story. So he was involved in the Wonderland killing story. I think we're going to come to Milwaukee and do something on Jeffrey Dahmer next. So if you're
Oh,
into
nice.
Very cool.
if you're into the big time crime stories, you'll like our channel. You'll dig it.
Awesome. Tom, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure. We'll do it again
Oh,
someday.
Okay, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Keep up the good work, guys.